Hey physicists, what's the crack? So today we're going to do is we're going to run through the discovery of the atom, or the model of the atom, okay? So this came out to be a 6 marker because you got to hit quite a few points from when it was first thought about to later on in time. Okay, so when it was first thought about, people thought about like your table, right? So your table's solid. So what they thought about was that probably the table is made of things called atoms, and those atoms were just going to be spheres, okay? And the first scientist to start thinking about this was a man called Dalton. So what Dalton said was that your atoms were just made of solid spheres. So spheres, kind of like a football. So that's all they knew about them. They just were solid spheres. Okay? Then science progressed, and someone else came along, and they wanted to test this model. Okay? So then J.J. Thomson came along, and what he said was there must be charges in here. So he said, actually, instead of it being a solid sphere, there's actually going to be some negative electrons embedded inside it. Okay? So J.J. Thomson said they called this the plum pudding model. Okay? He called this the plum pudding model because it looked like the plum pudding. So the plum pudding, and pudding, you know, like a cake, is a solid cake, a solid mass. And then if there's like raisins inside it, he said those raisins were kind of like the negative electrons inside it. So if you were to describe the J.J. Thomson model, you would say he called it the plum pudding model. So there's your mark there. And what you would say is that there is negative electrons and they are embedded in a solid sphere. Sorry, I can't spell. Solid sphere. Okay? So again, you've got your solid sphere of mass with your negative electrons embedded within it. Okay? So your next man came along was Rutherford. So what Rutherford did was he actually started to bring some scientific experiments into it. So what he did was he took an alpha particle. And you hopefully know about alpha particles from the particle topic. But alpha particles, remember, is a type of radiation. Okay? They're a type of radiation because they're a helium nucleus. And because of that, they've got a charge of +2. Okay? So he took alpha particles that have a positive charge, and he decided to fire them at this plum pudding model. So he thought if it is a solid sphere of mass, kind of like a big cake, he thought if I fire this alpha particle at it, what should happen is that they hit the particle and then they come straight back. Okay? And all of them should do that no matter what angle I come at. Okay? Kind of like if I kick a football at another football, they're going to hit each other and rebound. Okay? But what he saw was this didn't happen. What he saw was that when he fired the alpha particles at it, most of them went straight through. Okay? So the only way that most of them could go straight through and not hit anything is because most of it was actually empty space. It wasn't anything. And then a very rare of them, a very few of them, they hit something in the middle and then came straight back. Okay? So if they did hit something, there must be something in the middle. And that thing in the middle, he called the nucleus. Okay? And he knew the nucleus must also have a positive charge. So just writing this for positive. Because if it hit the nucleus and got repelled, like charges repel. So what Rutherford said was he's going to call it the nuclear model. So his nuclear model was that we're going to have a nucleus, and then around the nucleus is where the electrons are. So he said the electrons orbit the nucleus. Okay. Then further science came along, and then Bohr came along, and Bohr talked more about these electrons. Bohr said these electrons are actually in shells. Okay? So now we have our nucleus that's positive, and now we have our electrons that are in shells orbiting the nucleus, and shells around the nucleus. Okay, so we still just have a nucleus and our electrons. Then after Bohr, the last scientist you know is Chadwick. So then Chadwick came along and he said, inside that nucleus is where our neutrons and our protons are. So in here, in that nucleus, we now have neutrons, which we know have no charge, and protons, which we know have a positive charge, because we want to be positive like a proton, and then our negative electrons are orbiting that nucleus. Okay? So just to recap the 6 marks here. So first of all, you need to mention the names. So we need to talk about Dalton, saying that it was a solid sphere. You need to talk about J.J. Thomson, saying about the plum pudding. You need to say about Rutherford, and what he did was the alpha scattering experiment, or you say Rutherford and a nuclear model. And you want to say Bohr said that the electrons are in shells. And then Chadwick came along, and that's the first time we've used the words neutrons and protons. Okay? So again, these are the scientist names that you need to learn, and the names of the models are just the plum pudding and the nuclear model. Okay? And that's correct. Follow me for more physics content like this.